What up, comrades? So it's time to talk about Carol Danvers, Miss Marvel. Now, no, do not be confused. This Carol Danvers, in her initial iterations, was excellent in every possible way. She was strong, she was feminine, she was beautiful, she used all her assets, she had a complicated history, she had weaknesses and strengths, and just all around top of the line character. And she was and she gets heavily involved with the X-Men, which is why we're talking about this today. So I'm trying to remember what the name of this fucking thing is. It's like Marvel All-Stars or something. You'll see the covers if you look at the video. I just don't remember it as off the top of my head. But it's like some other Marvel thing, and it looks like it's like way in the future of where this current timeline is, and then we like took a jump back over here to like tell this story. So the two things we're going to talk about are the Carol Danvers interaction with Sabretooth, and then her interaction with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which lead into her being essentially a part of the X-Men for a decent amount of time. It's just like a human hanging out with no superpowers. She also has a previous history. So Carol Danvers served in the Air Force and then was a part of NASA. And she was like an intelligence officer and just excellent, right? She had some interactions with Logan back in the day when he was like working for the Canadian government, and they had like, it almost seems like they had a tryst, but at least they were like, they worked together as like spies essentially several times. And this comes up later in like the Wolverine arc and whatnot. But again, she's excellent. So we start off the part one of the story. I'm just going to go with that because there's like part one and the next issue is part two. Marvel Team-Ups, maybe? I think Marvel Team-Ups is specifically the Spider-Man one. And this is like, it had like a huge stories in this thing. Like this is clearly like an annual sized thing. I don't remember seeing it like this before, but anyway. So Carol has just joined the Avengers at this point, and she's training with Iron Man in their like training room, which is not the Danger Room from the X-Men, but is exactly the same thing. Anyway, and then she heads home and she's just kind of all tuckered out, and she's like, "Oh, my therapist called, and he wants like a better relationship or something." It was kind of sketchy. He wants a more serious relationship. Like, I don't want to get entangled with anybody right now. I don't want to get married, but like, he's a nice guy, and I don't know. And it's like, are you hooking up with your therapist? Like, she calls him his boyfriend at one point, and then later on calls him her therapist. And I was like, what? That is super unethical. Like, the fuck? Fuck that guy. And yes, fuck that guy indeed, because he's dead. Sad. Anyway, so Carol heads out to meet up with an old friend of hers, Daniel something, I think. Meets up with an old Air Force buddy of hers and his wife. And they're super chummy, and they're just chatting and stuff. And meanwhile, we see that Sabretooth has been caught somewhere, and that he's being transported somewhere else. And that's important because going back to Carol and her friends, they're immediately like a police prison van crashes into the sorry, there's like a lot of crazy traffic all of a sudden. Crashes into the diner where they're eating, and Carol has to transform into Miss Marvel so that she can rescue her friends. And they're like, "Oh, please help our friend Carol Danvers. She's trapped here too." And then Miss Marvel's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I just saved her. She's fine. She ran off or something." She's good. No worries whatsoever. Anyway, then she goes to like figure out what's going on, and she runs into Sabretooth, and then they just like fight. A lot of punches. Sabretooth is nigh on invincible, and he's strong and hardy, and he's got claws, and Miss Marvel is also nigh on invincible and so strong and can fly and punch real hard. And so they go back and forth. They just like punch each other, run around. She like traps him on like the subway track in New York City on like the third rail, so she gets like electrocuted. Or no, not she. He gets electrocuted, but then he just bounces back, and finally she like gets him from behind and just like pounds on like his neck real hard, like a whole bunch of times, so that pounds on his neck, so that it finally like knocks him out. And then she's getting dizzy, and she's like, "Call the Avengers, tell them to send like Hulk restraints over here and get this guy." And then she kind of like gets dizzy and passes out, or like she's like walking off, and she sees like this image, which is clearly a Mystique with like a skull behind her. And so moving on to the next issue, or part 2, she's like kind of worried about what's going on, and there's like a lot of stuff going on in this issue. We bounce around a lot. So we start off with Miss Marvel and Iron Man hanging out at the dead boyfriend / psychologist office, and Tony has some sort of device that will like echo the past, and so they watch. The guy gets up, he goes to the door, Carol runs in, gives him a hug, and she's like, "That's not me." And then when he turns his back, Carol like kills him, like beats him to death, and then transforms into dun 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 Mystique. It was Mystique all along. And so Mystique is like, goes through like Carol's files while she's there, and like makes a phone call, and then like moseys on out of there. Carol is like, I gotta deal with this. I can't. And then Iron Man's like, well, you're an Avenger now. We all work together. And she's like, no, just let me be. So she goes to the funeral, and while she's at the funeral, she has like another like crazy moment where she like almost passes out. And she does pass out, and she falls into like the grave of like her ex-boyfriend. I gotta say, the boyfriend thing is, if he's a therapist, he might just be a therapist and her boyfriend. That's what I'm hoping. I'm not gonna go back and look because I don't give a fuck. But because like the dead guy's mom is like, oh, he loved you so much, Carol. I'm so glad you can make it. I'm so sorry things didn't work out. And Carol's like, yeah, I miss him too. He's a good friend. Anyway, while she's in like her weird passed out dream, she's having dreams about being stuff collapsed on her, about a strange young girl. No, she has that later. About fire and all this stuff. And then she wakes up and they pull her out and she's like, God, get it together, girl. Anyway, so then she transforms to this Marvel, and she tracks down the call that Mystique made to this warehouse where she finds a bunch of like weapons, and then she hides because she hears some people coming, and it's our old boys, the Hellfire Club. It's Leland and Pierce and Tessa, and at some point Tessa like looks right at her, and she's like, I think that woman sees me even though I'm hiding, and she shouts it or something, or she has like a moment, and then she's like, ah! And then all the men like look up, and there's this third guy, Cohen or something. Anyway, he's the guy who's like running the weapons. Anyway, so Pierce jumps, kicks her, and then she fights him, and then Leyland uses his like weight management skills to like dump her down into the sewer, where they're like, she'd probably drown, we're fine. And then the guy's like, well, I don't know if I should ship the weapons. And then someone's like, well, Shaw is going to be very upset if you don't. Hold on, he's calling right now. It's to Tessa, and Tessa's like, hey, so Shaw just called, and he's calling to confirm that the weapons are being shipped to Hong Kong tomorrow. And then the Coelho guy or whatever is like, yeah, we're doing it. Sounds good. And it's like, okay, good. The next day, when the guy's like flying on the plane, this pretty blonde girl, which she has a weakness for pretty blondes, rolls up, and it's Carol Danvers, and she uses her feminine wiles to be like, "Oh, hey, cutie," and like flirts with him and touches his arm, and then they're flying to Hong Kong from New York, and she passes out for a little bit, and then she has another dream. This time, she's like a member of the Hellfire Club, and she's like, "The fuck is happening with all these dreams and stuff?" And then she sees this girl who's Rogue, and she's like, she kills Rogue, and she's like, "Ah ha ha ha," and it's interesting because and then we see a few seats back, it's Tessa, and Tessa's a telepath. So meanwhile, we flip back to Mystique, who's talking to Destiny. What do you call it? She's got the thing where she can see the future, but it's always the future changes, and she doesn't see like exactly. There's not like a set future, so she's like sees possible futures, and in one of those possible futures, Carol Danvers was going to like kill Rogue and take her soul or something crazy like that, and so Mystique was not going to have any part of that, so she's trying to kill her. So she sends Avalanche and Pyro to Hong Kong to kill Carol Danvers. Anyway, so Carol, she's in Hong Kong, she's hanging out, and then all of a sudden the Avalanche shows up, and he's like, fuck you, and like blasts her out the window, and so she transfers to Miss Marvel and lands, and then Pyro's there, and she beats the shit out of those guys, and is like, oh fuck, I gotta get back to New York. And then we go back to like Mystique, and then we get some like chatter from like the Hellfire Club, but I'm just like, I don't understand the Hellfire Club being in this story like whatsoever. Maybe they like manipulated them into attacking Miss Marvel, so Miss Marvel wouldn't bother them when it come to like their weapon shipment, but the whole reason she was going to the weapon shipment is because Mystique like killed her boyfriend and such, so it's like nothing makes sense. Like, I feel like it's very poorly written, and that's not how I remember this story going in like a future issue of something when she's like, Rogue's recalling what happened. It just is like Miss Marvel got into a fight with them in like an airstrip, and then Rogue got her, which happens here. because Rogue hears Mystique and Destiny, her like mommies, fighting about whatever's going on, and she's like, I got to take care of this. So she tracks down San Francisco. They're in San Francisco because Carol Danvers is like back in San Francisco hanging out, and Rogue like stops her and like punches her real hard, and I'm like, huh? Because Rogue's not strong. She's just like a normal teenage girl until she absorbs Miss Marvel's power. So again, it's like doesn't make sense. Like Rogue, unless she absorbs someone else's power, she has no. Her only power is to absorb other people's powers for a short period of time, or in this case, permanently, because that's what she does. Eventually, she grabs Carol Danvers and like sucks up all her powers, but also sucks up her like memories and her spirit essentially, because she hangs on for like too long, and so she just she gained. This is why Rogue can like fly and punch people real hard, and absorb powers, and why she's fucking awesome. But she like permanently stole Carol Danvers' powers, and then she like runs off, and Carol like falls into the river, and she gets saved by Spider-Woman, and then we just get panels, and then she like went to Professor X to get help, and then she joined the X-Men, and then she became binary, which is like, what? Like, where did this take place? That doesn't happen for like years. Anyway, so this is like, do not look this up. As in like, hey, you do what the fuck you want, but this is not a recommended way to like enjoy this piece of material. Like, yeah, it's just, it wasn't written really well, and the Sabretooth fight before was not very good. Like, whatever this fucking stuff is, it's like a hard pass all around. Like, it's shockingly incompetent for like whatever era. I don't even know it. I feel like this is like early 90s, late 80s. But so it's only a few years later from like when we're at in like the current timeline, but it like refers to things that don't happen for a while. So it's very confusing. The art's not very good. It's just like this was not a well-crafted piece of Marvel content. But I'm talking about it because I read it, and it's important to just realize that like Miss Marvel's a thing. Carol Danvers is a person. She stops being Miss Marvel like here, so she's never really Miss Marvel with the X-Men. To be honest, she's just Carol and Danvers, who like hangs out and does cool stuff, and that doesn't happen for a minute still. So we're still kind of far away from that. Maybe it's coming sooner than I think, but I don't recall it happening, because I owned like a bunch of omnibuses of these X-Men, the X-Men, and I think it was like Omnibus 4 is when she finally like shows up, and we're like currently at the beginning. We're still in 2, so, and I could just be totally off in my like mind frame with this whole thing, but anyway. But it's important to know because she's already showed up. Right, she's been around. She's hanging out with the X-Men already because she's already teamed up. So maybe she like officially teams up a lot sooner. I know with the team with Wolverine and Storm and Longshot and Dazzler, she's like a major component of that era, and like Madeline Pryor and stuff. But I guess that's probably coming sooner than I think, right? Because X-Force is when X-Factor. I think it's X-Factor is when Jean Grey shows back up. Anyway, all right. So yeah, that's hard pass on this. Just all you need to know is Miss Marvel is, or Carol Danvers lost her powers as Miss Marvel to Rogue, because Rogue is very prominent, and so is Carol Danvers. And yeah, there you go. So cool. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you all later. Bye. All right, hold up. I misspoke. After reviewing the last 2 issues of Marvel Superheroes, is what it's called, about Carol Danvers fighting Sabretooth and losing her powers to Rogue, I thought we were done for now. But we were not, because immediately the next issue that I read was the King Size Annual Avengers number 10 from 1981, which takes place directly after the last issue. So Spider-Woman is picking up Carol Danvers out of the water. She's struggling to fly with her because of wind currents or some bullshit. She gets to the hospital and everything's fine with her physically, but she is not okay when it comes to her mental. She's like a complete blank. At some point, Professor X gets a call from Spider-Girl or Spider-Woman, and they have a conversation. Then she connects telepathically with her so they can talk about what's going on. And what she's going to have he's going to have Spider-Woman do is come on over so that he can help retrieve her memories from deep inside. So, meanwhile, while that's going on, Rogue is attacking the Avengers as a superpowered Miss Marvel, since she permanently stole her powers. The first thing she does is fight Captain America, beats the shit out of him, takes his powers. The rest of the Avengers are hanging out in the manor when Captain America comes flying through. Meanwhile, Tony Stark gets a call from Jarvis. We're in his lab, and he's chit-chatting, and then he thinks the Wasp is coming up behind him, but it's actually Mystique pretending to be the Wasp, and she tags him real good. And we see that because we see him on the phone with somebody, and there's the Wasp standing there, and then Tony turns around, and there's the Wasp, and he's like, oh, hey, we need Hank. And then she goes, bam, gotcha. The Avengers are able to summon Dr. Blake, who is Thor's alternate personality at this juncture, to come help with the fight. And Spider-Woman starts fighting Rogue, and Spider-Woman is completely covered head to toe in like a costume, so Rogue really can't steal her powers, but Thor, she can. So she does. And then so Spider-Woman's having a real hard time. The rest of the Avengers come out. She knocks out Vision. She steals Wonder Man. Mr. Wonder? Is it Wonder Man or Mr. Wonder? He's like a super strong, fighting, flying kind of guy, like Miss Marvel, but he's also an actor or something. Anyway, so she goes through them, and then she takes off. The Avengers then talk. Spider-Woman catches them all up on what's going on. And we also learn that this takes place after the... what arc was that? It's the arc where Carol gets like kidnapped by a guy who impregnates her with himself. They go to limbo, and then we're going to get like... I forgot about this storyline, but it's kind of crazy. But she left the Avengers to go off with this guy to like another dimension, and then we find out that he was mentally controlling her, and the Avengers didn't stop it, and she holds a lot of grudges about that, which is why she wasn't an Avenger at this time. Okay, so then the League of Extraordinary Supervillains, or whatever, the League of Evil Mutants, what are they called? Anyway, they use Iron Man. They put like a thing on him that freezes him. That's what Mystique stopped him with. And then they throw him into this prison so that the Blob, Avalanche, Destiny, and Pyro can all escape because they were defeated and put there before. Right then, the Avengers show up, and they start fighting, and they fight. Blowing stuff up, fighting. The Avengers are having like a real hard time, particularly because Rogue is there, and she's beating the shit out of a bunch of them as well. And then Spider-Woman is able to find Iron Man and release him from his like frozen thing, and so then he's able to fly up because he also cannot have his powers absorbed. So he starts fighting Rogue with Spider-Woman, and then Wanda is using her hex powers, which are overpowered completely. She's just fighting everybody else and completely decimating them. But it's causing a huge problem in this prison because Pyro is going nuts and she's going nuts, and they have to knock Pyro out and then dump water onto his fire thing so that Wanda can stop doing her thing. And then Vision hits Blob, and they dump him into the ground and pour a bunch of like concrete or something on him so he can't move. All right, so then they beat the League of Supervillains, the Brotherhood, that's what it's called, Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And Mystique and Rogue take off free. A little bit later, back at the X Mansion, we find Carol Danvers swimming in a sexy swimsuit with Jessica Drew. No, not Jessica Drew. That is someone else. Jessica Drew is she's Jessica Drew. I don't know if she has a superpower name. With Spider-Woman. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's Jessica, but I can't remember her last name. And Aurora, and they're all wearing awesome uniforms. And then she goes to talk to the Avengers, and this is where she tells them that she didn't come back because they betrayed her, and they just let this guy come and kind of like rape her a whole bunch of times, take him to his dimension. And the only reason she was able to free herself is because this guy like miscalculated, like impregnating her with himself and then becoming her lover because it like killed him, turned him to dust. And then she's like, I don't want to be anything apart with the Avengers, so please leave. And the Avengers are like all sad eponymous about it, especially Wanda, because they were like close friends. And she's like, it's okay, I'll live, and I know that you're sorry, but please leave. And so they leave, and then Wanda's like super hung up about it and sad. While I'm here, I might as well talk about the Uncanny X-Men Annual number 5, because it doesn't have anything to do with anything. It also comes out in 1981. So this story, we return to Akon, but first we start with the Fantastic Four, who are just like fucking around doing shit, and then they get a call because there's this Shi'ar lady blasting like people in the middle of downtown. And what they don't realize is that there's these invisible creatures called the Badoon, and that she can see them and she's trying to fight them. But the Fantastic Four stop her, which causes everybody. She gets killed, and then the Fantastic Four get kidnapped, and then Sue Storm's able to escape only because she can turn invisible. She grabs her son and heads to the X-Mansion to get the X-Men to help. Meanwhile, Aurora's been having nightmares about these lizard creatures attacking the X-Men and Akon, her on-again, off-again lover from another dimension or part of the universe or something. And she wakes up from this nightmare and is like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then Sue like rolls in with a gun and Franklin, and passes out. Moira gets her back up and she tells them the story, and they decide that, hey, we got to go help the people in Akon's Golden Vaults, to go visit the people there. I can't remember. It's like the Sundered, not the, God, what was it called? Whatever kingdom he's. So they show up and Sasha's there. Sasha, I don't remember, but she's apparently the vizier's assistant. And so she fills the X-Men in that they got overran by this Badoon who showed up in a gate and they kidnapped everybody, including Akon. And Wolverine's like, it's hopeless. And then Sasha cries a little bit and Storm's like, Logan. And he's like, what? It's the truth. And so they split the team. Meanwhile, we see that the Akon and the Fantastic Four are being tortured by the Badoon leader, and that also we learn that the Badoons are teamed up with like a Shi'ar group that is using this like dimensional portal, and they're going to try to overthrow Lilandra, and that's why the Shi'ar lady had broken out of their prison to go help. Anyway, so Sue and Aurora dress up like sexy girls because apparently that's what the Badoon want or something, and so they head into the palace unperturbed. Meanwhile, Akon's like number 2, the big awesome bearded guy, Sasha, in a ridiculous battle outfit. Wolverine and Nightcrawler head to like disrupt the gate, take care of that business. And once Aurora and Storm see what's going on with the Fantastic Four, they like bust out and start fighting everybody. Meanwhile, Cyclops, Peter, Colossus, and Nightcrawler, or Sprite during this phase. I don't know if she's been called Shadowcat yet. I think she's still Sprite. They bust in the front door and start fighting, and they fight, and we just jump around, people fighting in different areas. The Akon's troops come, the Fantastic Four get freed by Aurora and Sue, and then like the leader of the Badoon sends forth this crazy monster that Peter fights, and eventually Peter's able to destroy by knocking him off a building and pile driving right into him, and then Colossus continues to beat the shit out of the Badoon. Meanwhile, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and Sasha are also beating the shit out of the Badoon, and that's when this is when Akon's forces finally like Imperius Rex or whatever show up. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Cyclops, the Fantastic Four, Aurora, and Akon are fighting off as well. So it's like fight. Eventually, they get down to like the place where the gates open and they're able to like come in, which makes them invincible because they can keep sending people. And they use some sort of like ridiculous science bullshit. Like essentially, Reed uses his fist to go through a tunnel to find out where the core of this machine is, while Colossus and the Thing are holding the machine, like it's like trying to seal, and they're holding it open. Then Sue creates like an invisible, like her like tunnel protection to follow the hand, and then Cyclops blasts it, so it destroys the machine. And victory! They win, and Akon's like, hooray! And Nightcrawler got beat up pretty bad. I don't remember seeing that, but he's like on the thing, and Cyclops is like, no, Nightcrawler! And then Wolverine's like, no, he's still breathing, but he really hurt himself because I guess when the thing exploded or something, he teleported Wolverine and Sasha out of there. And the Vizier's like, oh, I got it, don't worry about it. And he does, miraculously, literally. It just has miraculously healed. Then we get a sweet shot of all the Fantastic Four and X-Men just like partying out. And then we got like Sasha between Logan and Nightcrawler who are both like trying to get some. And then Akon just looks upset. And he's like, I must go talk to the woman of my dreams, which is Storm, of course, because she is the woman of all her dreams, because she's the best. Except for Peter, who's in love with Kitty. And she comes out in like a very sexy outfit for being like a 13-year-old. And he's like, whoa. I think Colossus is only like 16, so it's not as bad as you would think. It's not great. It's fine. Anyway, it's funny because Colossus is arm wrestling with the Thing, and when he sees Kitty, he loses because he's like, ooh. Aurora and Akon essentially confess their love for each other, but that they can't ever be in love because he's the imperator of this universe or whatever, and Storm is in charge of the X-Men. And so they kiss and most likely fuck. And then, all hail the X-Men, all hail the Fantastic Four, dun dun dun. All right. Now with that, we're going to wrap up the Miss Marvel arc, because next we start dealing with something else. I checked this time to make sure. So don't worry, comrades. I got you this time. I got you. Anyway, like, share, subscribe, comment, and officially, that's the close of this arc. All right, catch you later. Bye.